Hey guys, this is Hunter Levine, and thank you for listening to the Captain's Collective. In today's podcast, we sit down with Gray Drummond of the Florida Outdoor Experience and talk about a wide range of topics, everything from success to scent control to how to build teams, and also what makes a great outdoorsman. We got a chance to actually visit the Florida Outdoor Experience facility down in Chiefland. It was an incredible experience, and we're really excited for you to get a chance to hear from Gray. Also, we'd love for you just to help us out by continuing to share the podcast. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and like it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is that you're listening to this. We really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. This is the Captain's Collective.
Success is a gift. Excellence is the only thing to strive for.
Out in front of those,
He tried to eat it. He tried to eat it. Hit him.
You got him. He's on.
Two butt caps off the rods, filled them with tequila. We took a shot and out we went.
There ain't no getting into it after that. It's you're hooked. It's a bad habit.
And all the time Flip's he's standing there ready to go for a tarpon. Anytime he says, "You talk so much, you're like a senator."
Hey, great. Thanks for hanging out with us and making time to be on the podcast and showing us around FOE, man. What a great morning.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for taking the time to drive down.
And I can't wait just to talk a little bit about what all you guys have going on here and how much intentionality you've put into it and the way that you've tied in just history and the whole experience. And I'm looking forward to talking about that. But before we dive into all of that, I would love for you just to tell us a little bit personally about how you got into the outdoors.
Sure. Well, as you see and saw all morning, I live in a very rural area. So if you're not into fishing and hunting, then you're bored growing up as a kid. But seriously, other than fishing, hunting, and sports, there wasn't a lot to do, and we certainly never really took it for granted, but it was just a way of life. Mm-hmm. And so, getting into the outdoor industry, it almost seems like normal transgression, if you will, at this stage in my life. And as we were talking earlier, it was as I got into college and I started bringing some friends down, fraternity brothers and whatnot, down that maybe they were from more of a metropolitan area, Miami, or maybe they weren't even from Florida at all, but they had never seen this type of Florida, didn't know this type of Florida existed. Mm-hmm. And watching those guys, watching their expressions and just, be in awe of this, it really made me realize how special this was.
And you went up to Florida State, right?
I did.
And these were guys, South Florida guys.
A lot of South Florida guys, maybe some guys from, all over the United States, but either they never knew of this. They always thought of Florida as being, the Daytona beaches, the Miami, Tampas, et cetera. They never knew that we had such a rural part of Florida here, with the natural springs, the Swanee River, the Gulf of Mexico right here, and even some of the guys from Miami, Tampa, et cetera. They didn't know it either. And so watching those guys see this type of Florida for the first time, and me, growing up with it and having it in my backyard. And like I said, I never took it for granted, but it certainly wasn't something that I probably appreciated as much as they did seeing it for the first time. And so that probably was the seed that was planted to, start this.
You're kind of guiding them.
Kind of, yeah. And it was. And that's
them.
when I learned how to guide, especially with the hunting, is showing them. And I think every outdoorsman has a bucket list of things they want to try to either catch or, take with their bow or gun, et cetera, and whatnot. And I was no different. I had mine, and I had a bucket list for Florida. And I accomplished that really early, well before I intended on accomplishing it, and then it was like, wow, now what? So I kind of fulfilled that by taking other people hunting or fishing for the first time, or maybe not the first time. Maybe it was, they've been before, but they hadn't accomplished everything that they were wanting to accomplish. And I was able to fill that void, if you will, in my life by helping them accomplish that. And then I was living vicariously through them. And I was getting that same thrill that through them marking that off their bucket list or having that accomplishment as I had, that I no longer could get doing it myself. You know, and I think until you reach that level, you're never going to really be a true guide. You know, until you're happier helping somebody else facilitate that, accomplish that, you know, you're never going to be able to give it 110%.
And what were you studying at Florida State when you were up there originally?
Anything. We don't have long enough.
A few things. You're
Everything.
very ambitious. Well, but when did it kind of click for you?
Not that kind of show, Hunter.
I said this wasn't a got you show earlier, but I'm going to pull up a few things I researched. No. But when did it kind of click for you that, okay, I think I want to build out something with guiding in the hunting and fishing industry?
It's a great question, and I've thought of this over the years, and I've had this, you know, this has obviously been asked to me, but there wasn't a defining moment that said, okay, wow, boom, this is what I want to do. It was a natural transgression throughout my life as I brought friends in, and like I said earlier, able to watch them have some success and me be responsible for that success and knowing the feeling that I had by doing that. And then, you know, I've already, like, kind of just repeating what I said earlier, there just wasn't that defining moment. But
no stars, you weren't laying out
no,
here.
not really.
Saw the stars.
But I did, as I started branching out of the state, and before I kind of had an idea, and I tossed it around that, you know, I'd love to be an outfitter one day and offer, but I didn't want to just be just fishing, just hunting, I didn't want to be one-dimensional. The guys and girls that I looked up to growing up in the outdoor industry, they were true outdoorsmen, true outdoors women, you know, not fishermen, not hunters. I mean, they were everything. They encompassed all of it. And I've noticed that there's a lot of parallels between the two. You can certainly read a lot about this hunting and a lot about fishing, and you can become pretty knowledgeable about it and understand it to enough to have a intelligent conversation. But until you're out there and you have the failures, you know, or the successes, but in my case, I've learned mostly from my failures. Until you have those failures, and over time, until it becomes intuitive, where it's not, you can't just read about it, you have to experience, and you can't explain why you're doing this in order to reach this goal. Until you have, you know, you develop that intuition, you really, you're not there yet. You know, you need a hand in achieving that goal, and that's what we like to do. We like to take you from maybe step A to step C or D.
Could you, before we go any further, because I want to talk some about the failures thing, because you and I had a great conversation this morning about that. Yeah. But before we do that, could you just give everybody an overview on what you guys do at Florida Outdoor Experience?
Sure. We primarily, we like to think of ourselves as an outfitter that encompasses all of Florida has to offer, from fishing to, and when I say fishing, we do not offer offshore fishing. It's all inshore flats fishing, and we have some bass, Swanee River, and some bass ponds, but, and then hunting. We focus on, we welcome any kind of hunters, gun hunting, bow hunting. We focus primarily on bow hunting, and then the Osceola turkey. And that's our bread and butter for hunting in the spring. And it's only 6 weeks, but we probably run 60 to 65 folks through in those 6 weeks. And man, it's fun. It is fun. So if Florida offers it or has it, then we offer it. And from gator hunts to hog hunts to deer hunts to tarpon fishing, you know, red fishing, snook fishing, trout fishing. Man, did I leave anything out? Turkeys?
Well,
you know?
Did you sequence that? Did you just out the gate? Like, what was your first step? Did you just start with the Osceola turkey and then build it on, or did you roll it out from the very beginning?
You know, I think
because you do lodging too.
We do. We have 2 lodges that we house our clients in, and yeah, Osceola was always the focus because let's just face it, Florida's not a hunting destination unless it's the Osceola turkey. That's the one coveted bird that it can only be found in Florida. It can only be found in part of Florida. And so that's kind of Florida's, if you will, feather in their cap on the hunting side of things. That doesn't mean, though, that there are not some very, very good hunters in Florida that, that want to whitetail hunt or hog hunt. And I will say this, it's starting to get a little bit of traction, but are you all familiar with the Grand Slam in turkeys?
Yes.
The different regions, they have the Osceola, the Merriam, the Rio, the Eastern, etc. It's gaining some traction, but there's also a slam in white-tailed deer. And in Florida, we offer 3 subspecies of white-tailed deer. We have the coastal, the Seminole, and I know I've heard of the Keys deer.
Mm-hmm.
That's you can't hunt the Keys deer. I think that literally takes an act of Congress to do that.
Yeah.
But we do have 3 subspecies, and I know that there's over 20 different subspecies, but it's starting to become a thing, at least in the bow hunting world, to go around and get a whitetail slam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like I said, gaining a little bit of traction, which will be good for the state. But yes, Osceola was the primary focus when we started the hunting side of things. And I can remember, it was in your mind, you want to start everything at once. But in order to do something right, you really have to back up, take a deep breath, and start slow. So I started the hunting, getting that down first. I focused on that. And I can remember I built this great big booth, and I went up to the National Wild Turkey Federation show in Nashville and had an awesome booth. It had deer mounts on it, a redfish mount on it, a couple of turkey mounts, TVs with some videos of us hunting clients and things like that, or friends. We didn't have any clients at the time. That was in February, and we were ready to start this season in March. That was a 3-day event, and I think we had maybe 4 people interested. No one committed at the end of that, and we were sitting there taking this booth apart and just looking around, thinking, "Wow, maybe we missed something along the way." And then the phone started ringing, and we had, I think, 3 or 4 clients that first year. And man, I thought we were, we arrived. That was such a big deal. This is our 7th year, so that wasn't that long ago. And to think that we've gone from 3 or 4 clients that first turkey season to, up to maybe 60. It's snowballed, and it really, it happened fast, and we had to really be careful we didn't get the cart ahead of the horse in doing that. And fortunately, I was able to put together a great team of people that has made this happen, and has allowed it to happen with the attention to detail that I originally had dreamed about.
I wanted to just rewind a little bit. I know you spoke about sort of rekindling your appreciation for this area by those experiences in college when you would bring friends down and get to share your hometown with them. I think there definitely needs to be some time spent on your family's history in this town.
Sure.
I think it's incredible. And even the building that we're sitting in alone, there's tons of history behind that, but I would love just to hear a little bit of history.
Absolutely. My family came down from the Carolinas in the mid-1800s, before the Civil War, and settled here. And the piece of property I showed you, not all of our properties here are contiguous, as you saw, but they're all within 5-10 minutes of each other. And the last piece of property that I showed you was what's called Drummond Pond. If you look on the land out or on the Google Earth or whatnot, it says Drummond Pond, and that's where my ancestors. If there was a time machine, I tell people all the time, the first thing I would do is go back to when John Drummond arrived in Florida and wonder why in the world he said this is it. Was someone having a baby? Did the wagon wheel fall off and they couldn't repair?
The Grand Slam.
What? Maybe it was.
He's the inventor.
Good point. It might have been, but so my family's been here a while, and for whatever reason, we haven't left. We keep coming back to this area, and I'm no different.
So 5 generations here. The building we're sitting in right now is almost 200 years old.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Yeah.
And one of the things that's really neat about the property, and we'll post some photos in the blog post on Captain's Collective, but one of the cool things about it is you've really tried to make this natural Florida. So you want it to be the true wild Florida
That's correct.
experience.
Yes.
So there's not, kangaroos running around or,
No.
anything like that. And then also you've tried to maintain the integrity of some of these different facilities so that they still feel like it's almost a step back in time.
Correct.
And could you just tell us a little bit about your mindset behind what you're trying to do there with some of the natural feel to it that's maybe a little bit different than going to some sort of all-inclusive resort that's super fancy?
Sure, absolutely. Having the history in Florida that I have, and being, I consider that fortunate. I consider it very lucky, and I think it's a rare thing now. There are not many people that can say they're 2-3 generations in Florida, and but I can, and I think that there are some people that are interested in seeing that and seeing the history of it, and having this in my backyard. It's something that was definitely part of the plan when starting Florida Outdoor Experience, and not only helping people achieve what their goals are, whether it be a turkey, a tarpon, a redfish, a deer, whatever, but to also give them a little bit of a history lesson on the importance of preserving, which ties into conservation, which obviously, as you know, we're a huge advocate of. And it allows us kind of a platform to teach, if you will, a little bit, educate some folks about that while they're here. And hopefully when they leave, they don't just leave thinking about that animal that they, caught or took or whatnot, but they're also thinking about the history of Florida. And man, we have a neat history here. A lot of people don't realize that, but if you grew up in Florida, you learn a little bit about it. But like I said, most people haven't grown up in Florida. They've come to visit, or they've moved down here in the last few years or whatnot. They don't know about our history, but it was the Wild West of the East. I mean, the people that moved here back then, they were they either lost everything they had somewhere else, or they were running from the law or something. I mean, this was a rough country to live in. Plus, you had the Seminoles, and that's the only tribe that never surrender. And I mean, they had a lot of things they were dealing with coming here, and the pioneers. And I love sharing that. And I'm very proud that my ancestors were a part of that. And I'm very proud that I'm able to pass that on to my girls and share that with them. And so I certainly hope that this is something that they can, if not take over one day, at least really appreciate.
And what led you to the model of wanting to lodge? I mean, one of the things you were showing me, you're like, this is where we would keep our clients. This is where we would have the food for them.
I noticed that, and before I started Florida Outdoor Experience, as I was saying, I had some experience with different outfitters and over the years, and probably took 5 or 6 years in doing that. And while I was there, I was learning. I was trying to figure out what I liked about this group as opposed to that group, what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. And I took a lot of notes, wrote a lot of things down. And the common denominator, I think, between all of them that I loved, from the ones that were good, that really stood out, the common denominator was not necessarily the game or the abundance of game, which was there because they were doing everything right, but it was the fact that their clients came first, and it was all of them, the ones that I really liked, it was an intimate setting. And what I mean by that is it was the guides there were excellent people. They knew how to read their client, and they knew how to interact with their client. And after being there 3, 4, 5 days, you felt like you've known these guys all your life, and they were one of your good friends. You wanted to keep in touch with these guys after you left. And that was something that was very important, because when I was establishing and trying to build this team, I realized that, obviously you had to have a little bit of an outdoor experience in order to come work here. But most importantly, I can teach anybody how to be a hunter, a turkey guide or whatnot to the level to guide, but I can't teach them how to be a people's person. And you either have that or you don't. And that's the key ingredient, because what I mean by that is, we were saying and talking a little bit earlier, say you have a client on the bow of your boat, or you're hunting a guy, you're calling a turkey in, and that turkey's within 10, 15 yards and they miss, man, nobody's harder on themselves on that hunter than that hunter is on himself. And so you got to go as a guide and as the right guide and as a people person, you got to go into therapy mode then. You got to be, hey man, shake it off. It's all right. Just like that quarterback threw an interception on the side, you go over, you talk about what he did wrong, but when he's going back in the game and you need his mind right, and you don't need him rattled. You need to make sure he understands that this happens to everybody, which it does, and that, hey man, shake it off. We'll never forget. We're going to get it done, but what did we do wrong? Da 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 da. You keep him focused, you keep him positive, and let him know it's okay. Let's recharge. Let's do it again, and let's have a good time when we do it again. And if we miss again, we're going to do it again, and we're going to have fun, because I think so many times in this, we put so much pressure on ourselves in order to accomplish said goal that we forget why we're here. And we're here to have fun. This is supposed to be fun. So let's keep that in perspective,
I think that's something that's so far overlooked when people can look back and say, like, I had a great experience. And as a guide, it's very easy to think, I'm trying to sell that turkey. I'm trying to sell that tarpon. But the good guides realize that they're selling the entire experience. It's not.
They are.
It's just not. It's not just the fact that, okay, I have to put this person on a turkey. I have to put this person on a whitetail. It's the fact that I have to make this experience of doing those things enjoyable throughout the whole.
Right. And I tell our guides all the time. At the beginning of the year, we have a little meeting. We get together, and I tell them a couple of things. One of the things is, I absolutely do not believe in luck. I mean, luck to me, that's a fluke. That's a fluke. You never learn anything by a fluke or luck. It's a Hail Mary. And so, but I tell them, the harder you work, the luckier we're going to all get. And to stay focused on that. And also, I let them know that we're successful. First of all, you can't control Mother Nature. You can't. I mean, it could rain, it could be windy, or whatever have you. The ant-targeted species not cooperating, you're going to have. That's just stuff out of your control. So you focus on what you can control, and you try to eliminate as much of the human error out of it, which you are responsible for, and that's on you. You can fully control that. So at the end of the day, it's all about the conditions then, and you're focusing around that. You're worrying about that. You're not worrying about whether the client's put a shotgun shell in his gun or whether you got enough gas to get around whatever, But so you control what you can control. You focus on that, and also you have to realize that you're giving these people an experience, and when you're 80 or 90 years old, and you're laying in bed and you're thinking back on your life, you're not going to remember that truck you drove when you're 25 or 30 or whatnot, but I bet you're going to remember that tarpon you caught when you were 18 or you were 20 or you were, we hopefully are giving these people an experience that is invaluable, because these are things you're going to remember the rest of your life. And we want to be a part of that. And I wish I could, I enjoy that so much, and I get such a high off of that I wish I could do it for free. I wish we could not charge anybody anything to have that. Because it's definitely a drug to me.
And you talked about learning earlier. You learn more than from your failures.
Man,
your success.
I have. Unfortunately, I've never been one of those. I wasn't born with the it factor.
Yeah.
I had to work hard for every accomplishment I had, but in doing that, for every 10 failures, there's been one success. And so I always learn from my failures, and so I'm not saying I ever embrace failing. Nobody embraces it, but you try to look at the positive in everything, and you try to use it as a learning point. I keep a log religiously, good or bad, and I'm constantly looking back in that, trying to check off things that I'd, through this time, maybe I'm going out bow hunting, and the moon phase is this. I have a northwest wind, and these conditions are this. Let me go back in my log and see what happened back, 2 years ago when the conditions were that. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? And that allows you. After a while, you develop a pattern in that, and it's kind of just personal
Get your
reasons. It's fun.
And you know, you
still
have
fun
it.
to do.
And something that was interested to me was you have that in the outdoor world. So you got the log, or you make mistakes, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have set up this way, but you also have it, to tie back to what you said earlier, which you have it in the business world too, which
Absolutely.
you know, people in your circumstance they're navigating both. And sometimes you go to a big conference and you set up this booth and you got all these TVs and mounts and you spend all this money and all this time and all this energy, and then you failed. And a lot of people, I think they would have gotten in the car and, you know, they just would have, maybe they wouldn't even have taken ownership. They would have just ragged, you know, oh, it's the conference's fault, it's the people's fault, or whatever. But how do you try to learn from failure as a business leader and then also as an outdoorsman?
You know, I think first and foremost, if you are not happy in doing whatever you're doing, you're never going to be successful at it. So that's the foundation of, you know, your answer. So unless it's and when I mean happy, I mean you need to love what you're doing to a point that it's an obsession. And you also need to understand that you're not going to do anything overnight. There was a book that, I don't know if you all heard of it, it's called The Outliers. It was written by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you read that book before?
I actually have, yeah.
You have? Okay. I think it came out in 06, 07, something. Anyway, in that he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. Are you familiar with the 10,000 hour rule?
Yeah, Tom Rosenbauer actually brought that exact thing up
Okay.
when I interviewed him last week. Yeah.
Well, I think that that's a book everyone should read, no matter what field you're in. And you know, so knowing that, and I don't want to ruin the book for you because I want you to read it. But in that, it basically says it takes 10,000 hours to be able to master something. Until you can be a professional, until you are the guy or the girl at said job or whatever you're wanting to get into, it takes 10,000 hours. And I think they use the band The Beatles in the book as a as kind of a group, as an example. But, you know, so you have to, in order to do something for that long, and that's a lot of years, you know, but in order to do something for that long, you better enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, if it's not, doesn't become an obsession, you're not going to be successful at it. And in that, you have to understand you're going to have a lot of failures. And you have to be able to have thick skin, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be naysayers. And, you know, you're going to have... be talked down about or two, and you know, more people are going to not support you probably than support you. But at the end of the day, it's if you're obsessed at it and you do your job and you stay truthful to yourself, then you're going to be successful. But it doesn't happen overnight, and people just, they give up too soon. They do, because it'll all come together. It will, if you stick with it. There's just no shortcuts. And I've tried them, and I was told that at the beginning. You know, you can't take a shortcut. There are no shortcuts. Well, I think I've tried every shortcut there is, and I'm here to say they were right. And there's just no shortcuts. You have to just grind it out. It's do it the hard way, and go years without getting any credit for anything, and not have anything to show for it. And then, but for whatever reason, it will come together.
And enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. And we talked about that. And that's another good point, because people, they don't realize that the journey is 90% of the fun. You know, I think you were talking about how you guys went down to the Keys and did a one-day trip down there, left at 2 in Tallahassee, had a hamburger at 12 in the Keys, turned around the next day, drove all the way back, you know, because that was all you could afford to do at the time to get this interview done. And you look back, and that was a fun trip for you guys. You know, that was part of the journey to get this thing accomplished. And there's little things like that aren't planned, that's part of the journey, that's priceless. And you gotta really learn how to live in the moment, so you don't get too hung up on the past or whatnot, or worry about the future. But you need to focus on what you can focus on right now, because these are the good times, man. You know, these are the times.
These are the good old days.
You hear about that. People say, "Oh, back in the good old days, we had fish everywhere, or there were deer everywhere, or whatever you know." But in 10 years, we're going to be talking about 2019, the good old days.
Yep.
And so you need to enjoy those right now.
I'd love to transition too to talking a little bit about the business side of what you guys are doing here, and we'll definitely have some fun, especially in the rapid fire on some hunting and fishing kind of technical questions. And I had some people off our newsletter submit some questions also, so we'll have fun with that. But something that is really obvious to me is that you don't just love this land and this property and the nature and the facility you have here, but it's very obvious that you also love your team who you're doing it with. You were showing us your guide headquarters, I think is what you call it, and we got to kind of walk around and hang out there. And could you just talk to us a little bit about how you built your team and how you thought about building the team around you? Everything from photography to guides, the holistically from a business standpoint. What have you learned about building
I'm
teams?
proud of our team. I love our team, and I'll put these guys and girls up against anybody in the world. And I've seen a lot of different outfitters and a lot of different teams, and this group, and well, I'm an only child, first of all, so this was part of the equation that I never anticipated really loving as much as I do, is having this team, and that has become, arguably, if you will, for lack of better words, my family, my extended family, the brothers and sisters that I've never had. But getting back to your question, I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but been building this team, like I had mentioned earlier, that I can teach a lot of folks about how to be a guide in the outdoors and about how to, call a turkey, et cetera, but I can't teach people how to be a people person. And so our team consists of folks that love teaching, they love people, they love interacting with people, and they love living vicariously through other people's successes. We're very, I've raised the bar very high for these folks. We don't have a 3-strike rule here. We have a 1-strike rule and you're out. We can't afford to have 3 strikes. I mean, there's a lot's expected of these guys and girls. This team I have now, it's taken every bit of these 7 years to develop into the team that we have right now. And these guys and girls are finally got there where all of these folks are going to be here as long as they want to be. I can't imagine these folks slipping up or whatnot. They're great. And we've got ages from 24 all the way up to 62. And there's just no drama. We can't afford to have drama. We don't do drama, and we'll run up to 15 guides at a time. And we all work together. We all share information and knowledge. And I cannot tell you how rewarding that is and how much fun that is to have that. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. It's just clicking. And once you have a couple of years under your belt, you tend to know the other person's tendencies or guide's tendencies, and we're all pitching in to help each other out, so we a lot of times can finish each other's sentences. But it's definitely a family. And at the end of turkey season, it's 2 weeks of depression. Everybody kind of goes their separate ways for a little bit. But it takes a team to make this happen. One person cannot do it. I could not be, FOE, I should say, could not be anywhere where it is now if it wasn't for the group of guys and girls we have with us. And man, there's some sharp folks. I mean, having some of these younger guys, especially on our team, it gives you a lot of hope for the industry going forward. And some of these guides, I mean, you need to interview some of our guides. They're, you got the Ryan Nitzes out there, and you've got Parker O'Bannons. Gosh, I could go on and on. Brian Sawyer out of Homosassa. I mean, we've got some great dudes. Man. Lacey Kelly. Chris Whitman, Captains for Clean Water, Ron Bachman. I mean, I'm leaving half of them out, and I'll get a phone call after this thing airs. But
there's a link to them on your website.
Yeah.
How would you describe your leadership style with the team?
In this industry, you have to have a lot of trust, and like I said earlier, I expect a lot. But I don't ask them to do anything I wouldn't be willing to do or don't do on my own. But once I showed them the ropes, the team we have now, there was very little teaching involved. They picked things up. They picked everything up very quickly, even the ones with no experience in guiding before. And I if you come over, and you just showed up during middle of turkey season, I think you would have a hard time to find out who the owner was. I wouldn't say, I don't like to think of myself as the boss or whatnot. I mean, it really is a round table here. So I would say trust. Trust is probably having the trust in these folks. That's the key to if you have the right team, you can have the trust in your team, then that certainly makes you a good leader, because you're able to listen and learn from what the input that they're providing you. And if you don't have the trust in your team and where you can do that, then I don't think you're going to be successful. You can't rule with an iron fist by any way, shape, or form. I don't care what industry you're in. It has to be, I believe in, instead of ruling from the top down, from the bottom up. Those are the folks that are really in tune with your clients and the people that are coming in, and you need to be able to have a round table. And if you don't have those right people, then you need to get the people out and get the right people in. You're never going to change, somebody. You're never changing spots on a leopard. You're never going to change somebody that doesn't fit into your culture. They're not going to. They're either fit or they don't fit. And so my advice is get those out, get the right ones in. Don't try to waste your time or their time.
Yeah. And along those lines, I know not just you, but your family has a background in business. How do you feel that background?
We have a background in business and cattle and moonshine, you name it.
But how do you think that background in business has helped you sort of oversee and influenced how you oversee FOE?
I think it's taught me people's tendencies, and what to focus on and what not to focus on in order to achieve your goals. Everyone's human, and you have to understand that. Everyone makes mistakes, including myself, a lot of them, obviously. And but the key to running this smoothly and having the right team is communication. And today's age, there is no excuse not to be able to communicate, whether it be through texting, calling, whatever, emailing. You have to communicate. And as long as everybody's communicating with everyone, changes, I'm all good. And I hate surprises. More than anything on earth, I hate surprises. I do not do surprises. There's no reason for surprises. So in communication, you can avoid all of that. So I think that's probably the key factor in everything running smoothly, is knowing where everybody stands and communicating with everyone, so we're on the same page. And if we're not on the same page, it's my fault.
Taking ownership over
I
it.
need to. I have to. I didn't portray what I needed out of them very well if they're not communicating with me, and that goes back on me. So.
And that was something we learned from Eugene Schuler, who he manages an outfitter up in Bryson City, North Carolina, and you could just tell he takes ownership over the guys on his team, and has a very similar mindset, and really wants he said the same thing about people skills. He really wants his clients taken care of, and it's obvious that there's a lot of hospitality that goes into a good outfitter, taking care of them.
And you think about it, we have a one-on-one guide to client experience here. And so when that client is with, let's say, Hunter, you're a guide here, and you take one of our clients out, when they leave, they don't think about Gray Drummond as being the face of FOE or Lacey Kelly or anybody. They think about Hunter. FOE in their eyes was the experience they had with Hunter. So I've got to have a lot of trust in you and communicate with you, and for you to portray what I'm trying to pass on to these folks. When
how do you go the extra mile there too, though? Like when you have a client come in, let's say, whether you're a single man operation, or even if you're listening to this and you're not a in the outdoor industry, but you're just in the business industry. Like, how do you go the extra mile for clients around here?
I like our clients to see every aspect of it. And what I've learned by that is they love hanging out with the guides and they love seeing behind the scenes stuff. And so one of the things that I make sure we all do, let's say we have our clients come in at dinner, I like each of our guides to take a client off to the side or whatnot. And, maybe we have an aerial map of where we're going to hunt or where we're going to fish the next day, or maybe we just have a pen and paper and we kind of draw out something and I want to include them on the game plan. So let's say you and I are going out in the morning turkey hunting and you've never stepped foot on our property before. I'll call you aside and say, Hunter, okay, this is what we're looking at tomorrow. This is the aerial. We're going to come in here. We're going to stop here, listen for a bird. And I expect we're going to hear one over here on this northeast side, but if we don't, we're going to cut through this gap. And so at least in your mind, you feel like that you're having an understanding instead of just being of what we're doing, instead of just being drug around in the dark. You understand the game plan, and it's a team sport the way we do it. So it's an asset to me if you understand what's going on and what I'm thinking. And so we try to include everybody in every aspect of it. Let's say the wind shifts and you're deer hunting and we need to go hang a stand or move a stand around in order for you to sit for the next morning. We'll bring our client with us, man. Let's go do it. We try to incorporate the clients in on every aspect of what we do. And I think that is something, by doing that, they feel that they've had a part of the process and of hopefully the success.
Yeah, I think it was pretty impactful what you said when we were across the deck over there, and what you said was like sort of a kitchen over there.
The cookhouse.
Yeah, the cookhouse. Yeah. You were explaining how you want people that show up and stay here the week or the weekend not to feel like they're around a bunch of staff, but they're around a bunch of friends.
Exactly.
And that you want them to be immersed in the process and not feel like they're outsiders that are just existing.
Right. You're not a number, you are a name.
Exactly.
And that's important, that you have a name. We want to know your name. We want to know your background. We want to know your interest. What do you do for fun when you're not hunting or fishing? You got any kids? What's going on? We want to make it personal, and it is personal, and that's important to me. It's important that we go that extra mile to make people feel like this is their home away from home with their buddies.
And cooking the meals for them and lodging them gives you so much more access to that too.
Absolutely. We eat with our clients every night, and hang out with them. And it's like I said, when I said earlier, I wanted to create an intimate setting, and that's what we did. You can see our lodges. I think this one has 3 bedrooms in it. The other one has 4. They're not great big houses or whatnot. I mean, they're nice, but they're fairly tight quarters, and that's for a reason. You're not a number.
I'd love also just to transition and talk a little bit more about the hunting and fishing and dial in a little bit there, moving away from the business side.
Yeah.
In what ways for you, as somebody who loves hunting, fishing,
Absolutely.
you like fly fishing, you like archery, how has your experience in the hunting side of things helped you in the fishing, and vice versa? How do those feed and play off each other?
It's funny, I get asked that quite a bit, and what's interesting, and thank goodness, the two parallel each other in a lot of ways. The instincts you pick up hunting carry into fly fishing. But what are you doing? You're hunting. If you're fly fishing, you're hunting. You don't have a bow or a gun, but you have a fly rod. You're not blind casting most of the time out there and hoping you get a bite, but you're actually physically watching hunting. That boat, that casting platform is your tree stand. That guide on the back pulling you, that's your camera guy. That's your other eyes. You're hunting these fish. It's the same thing. Maybe you don't have to be stealthy the same way you do when you're out in the woods, but you have to be stealthy in other ways, through your tools, through the boat that you're using, through the presentation of the fly to the fish, So there's so many parallels, and I find that when I'm teaching people how to bow hunt that are have been fly fishing for quite a while, and that's their gig, and they want to transition into hunting, and they want to pick up a bow. I find that it's an easy transition for them. Those instincts they developed fly fishing, it carries into bow hunting. They get it.
Mm-hmm.
They pick it up a little bit faster, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be the case. So it's the parallels are uncanny. It's really interesting.
And how do you kind of manage the transitions from season to season? I saw you post something the other day. It was funny. You were like, it's time to trade in the board shorts and flip flops for jeans and boots.
Usually you're ready, and
you got a whole different clothing persona.
You do.
You change up your accent. And no, I'm just kidding. But, obviously it's fun. A lot of guides are doing that, whether it's species to, but how do you think through those transitions? And then also just a little bit of an add-on, how do you prepare well for the next season while still being faithful and active in the current season?
Well, in a lot of cases in the woods, especially, you have to obviously do a lot of management. And I mean that, prescribed burns, mowing, etc. But in a lot of cases, less is more. Thank goodness. You need to leave things undisturbed. You need to have some peace. You need to let them everything kind of relax. So you're obviously, if you go into the woods in the off season, or even especially during the season, you better have a purpose. Get in, get out. I don't believe in pressure. I think that's the number one cause of not having success in the woods. People wanting to go in, check the trail camera, get in, hang this stand here, move this stand here. You're spreading your scent everywhere. And so, you need to have some downtime. You need to let your woods take a break and let everything settle down. So, which is great because it allows us to go out, and instead of hunting in the woods, we're hunting on a boat now with our clients there. And so I think the transition is, it's easy in a way. It's hard mentally because turkey season I love so much, man. It's my passion, and it's only 6 weeks, and you're just getting in your groove when all of a sudden, it's over. You turn around, it's over, and you're like, where'd it go? It just started. What do you mean it's over? I'm just filling it out. I'm just getting everything dialed in. And so after, I go through a week or two, a little depression, and then I pick myself up. We hook the boat up, and we do the tarpon thing. And but for the most part, I welcome the transition. I do. You've been in camouflage from September through arguably the end of April, and I'm ready to trade in that for some board shorts and flip flops. So it's neat. It's a luxury you have when you do both that I think you don't, obviously, when you're just more one-dimensional. I'm sure there's some cons to it too, but not for me. I've always the people that I've always followed and I've really looked up to growing up are the people that did both, that were the outdoorsmen. We never really distinguished between, is it fishing season or hunting season growing up. We would get up sometimes in the morning and hunt, and then over lunch we would be fishing, then go back hunting in the afternoon. So it was kind of always in my mind, one of the same. It's just one was done on land, one was done in the water. I never really differentiated between the two.
And what do you think makes a great outdoorsman?
Somebody that is intuitive with nature. I don't care how many deer that you've shot with your bow, or how many you've shot with your gun, or how many tarpon you've caught. I don't care about that. And you learn more when you're not having successes than when you are, because then what happened? It's over now. You're not really learning. When you shoot that animal, then it's anticlimactic almost. Or so I think somebody that makes a good outdoorsman is someone that appreciates all aspects of the outdoors. When they're in their tree stand and they're, the squirrels are going off, or you see some you hear some crows, that just got alarmed. You learn what, maybe you should be on point over here, or what alerted that squirrel here. Little things like that. And on the water, the same thing. You're constantly watching. I mean, if you needed advice, about something on the water, do you go to the guy on the bow or the guy on the back of the boat? That's not fishing. You go to the guide, and well, what's he doing? He's learning. and you're not learning when you have a gun in your hand all the time or when you have a fly rod in your hand. You are, but it takes those days that you're not hunting or you're not actually fishing, but you're just going out there and studying and studying and studying. That makes a good outdoorsman, somebody that's willing to put aside the kill or the catch to actually learn why. Why are the animals moving this way? Why are the fish swimming this way? Why are they doing it today as opposed to yesterday? What's changed? Look at the elements. What's the moon doing? What's the wind doing? What's the barometric pressure doing? A good outdoorsman looks at all of those things and to help make a decision on what his next or her next move is going to be.
Do you find any correlation between like having a good fishing season and having a good hunting season?
Yeah,
like,
it's one of the same. And I don't know if I could say it's a correlation. It's a great question. I've never looked and thought, wow, I had a great hunting season, so now it's going to be a great fishing season. Shoot, man, the weather here changes so much. So the weather we have when we're hunting is not necessarily the same barometric pressure or wind pattern that we have when we're fishing. And plus, you have tides to worry about when you're fishing, and you don't have to worry about when you're hunting. But you also have, when you're hunting, I think it's maybe a little more intimate. You have to be. I don't want to say it's more up close and personal because a lot of times, you're casting that laid up tarpon or laid up redfish and you're just so whispering and you're quiet, you're trying to get in there. That's pretty up close and personal.
You are sort of out of their element.
You are, and they both, you can argue which gives you or has the most challenges, and they both do, I think, in general, and I'm sure there's some species of fish, maybe permit, which would be an exception, but in general, I think it's a little more challenging to hunt with a bow than it is fish with catch a fish on a fly rod. For no other reason, you can see more, and they can see you a little better, from a further distance at least.
What would you say to somebody?
They can smell you.
So, like, part of what you guys do here is you try to give this holistic experience. You spend time with them. You show them on the aerial map, here's what we're going to do tomorrow. You're narrating as you're doing things. Okay, here's what we're listening for. Here's what we're looking for. You're trying to help them become better outdoorsmen. But you're also trying to live out that E part of FOE, give them this experience that you're a part of, but they're experiencing not a kill, they're experiencing the holistic nature of what's happening around them. And what are some things that people can do to either help somebody become a better outdoorsman or just to try to be a better outdoorsman themselves, to notice those things?
Well, first of all, you have to have your mind right, but I think you can you start by reading everything you can read. When I say reading, listening to or reading everything you can. TV, you're not going to get it. Too much fluff on TV. I don't even watch TV anymore. I couldn't tell you the last outdoor show that I watched on TV, or at least that I've taken anything away from. Too many of them, they could make the worst shot ever, but happen to find the deer the next day. They always do. Unfortunately, we don't, but they do. So you want to read everything that you can, and there's no shortcut to just than just getting out there and experiencing it. I wish there was a definite answer, and I don't have one. I mean, other than just telling you that you're not going to do it sitting here behind a table. You're not going to do it if you don't get out there and you pull that flat 100 times to figure out what that tarpon's doing. And you're not going to do it unless you sit out there in those woods when it's not hunting season, before season, scouting. You're not going to do it if you're anywhere but the set area that you're trying to accomplish whatever your goal is. You have to immerse yourself in it to where you're one. You have to understand the food sources. You have to understand, the tides. You have to find out why. You have to be able to explain why. Not that, I caught this. Well, why? Why did you catch that there? Or why were you able to take that deer when you took that deer? What happened to make that all come together for you? Well, I don't know. Well, when you do know, let me know, because that's the guy I want to talk to that knows why.
Well,
that's where I'm going to learn.
And to
from
cheat
that person.
here a little bit, you talked about certain figures in your life that helped explain to you why. And it's not a dichotomy between everybody believes that you got to have time on the water, you got to have time in the woods, but also and it's the old proverb, iron sharpens iron, and that's in a spiritual context with maturity, but it is true with the outdoors too, that if you get around great outdoorsmen, they're going to rub off on you if you don't run them off, I guess.
You have to be around the right people in the right frame of mind. There's different types, as you know, there's different types of fishermen, and there's different types of hunters. There's the fishermen that want to, they're well on their second case of beer by 12 p.m. in the afternoon, and they've got a fresh live well full of bait ready to go. And then there's the hunters that, they prefer maybe to run dogs and, chase them with trucks and stuff like that. And so there's different elements that play into that. And fortunately, and that doesn't interest me. I wanted to be more in tune with nature. I wanted to kind of be one with nature. That's why I love to bow hunt. I love to be fly fish. I feel like it's more stealthy. It's quiet. And so I've had some folks in my life and that I don't know why, and I don't know how I've been so fortunate and lucky, but there are some folks in my life that have helped me fine tune a lot of my instincts and a lot of what has allowed me to become a successful outdoors person, and I'm very, very grateful to those folks. One of them fortunately lives just right around the corner from me. His name's Steve Kilpatrick, and he was. I've heard people say Mangum's the bad boy of the flats or whatnot. Steve was the bad boy before Mangum. He was, but he was always very gracious to me. He was the guy that guided the first 200-pound tarpon on fly, and he took me under his wing years ago. And I met the guy. I met him in Georgia. We were hunting in Georgia during rut. Georgia's got a pretty good rut up there. And so I remember we didn't know each other, and we were at a mutual friend's place, and came in for lunch, and this guy was sitting there with a bow, and I remember I looked at him, I said, "What are you doing with a bow? It's in the middle of rut in Georgia, man. Where's your gun?" And Steve's probably, I don't know, he's in his 60s now. He's a little bit older than I am. And he was laughing at me, and so we found out that we were from the same town. I was like, wow, that's interesting. In our town, you went through it. Hard to believe there's somebody there you don't know. But anyway, from there we kind of formed a friendship, and he took me under his wing, and he taught me so much about bow hunting, got me really fine-tuned into that. Definitely took me from, say, level 2 to level 9. He was responsible for that. And in the fishing side of things, he was solely responsible for me getting into the fishing like I was. And it's a transgression. And I think that's something that's important that people know about. When you start out fishing, very few people start out fly fishing. A lot of people start out with traditional tackle, and they're happy with that. And maybe that's all they ever do. Maybe that that's all they want to ever do, and they're great with that. And if so, that's awesome. Good for them. And just like in hunting, some people, they start out, 90% of the people or more start out with a gun, and that's all they ever want to do is gun hunt. But when it's in your backyard and you're able to do one of those two things every day, after a while, you look for a next challenge. What's next? Kind of getting bored with this, I want to move to something else. So I met Steve at the right time in my life when I was kind of ready to step out, if you will, of the traditional style fishing and hunting, and man, I gotta give credit where credit's due. He allowed me to do that and was very patient with me, and I'm grateful for him for that. Always will be. So, and then from there, a little later, he introduced me to Shaw Grigsby, which Shaw. I did the camera boat for him for couple of different. Every now and then Shaw would do a saltwater series, and so when he'd come over in our area to do a saltwater series, I kind of became his camera boat, and then from there I started being the guy he would call to take him out to do his saltwater series show, where I graduated from the camera boat to the guide on his boat, and Shaw was, if you've never met him, he's just a jam up person, super dude, and he was very helpful. And then I got invited to a guides event down in Crystal River one time. Steve and I drove down there, and we were having, I think it was on they were boiling lobster or something. I don't remember, but I ran in, and there was Flip Pallet. And so I was like, oh boy, and growing up as a Florida boy, we don't have very many outdoorsmen that we can follow and look up to, true outdoorsmen, and I had obviously always idolized Flip Pallet, and so I'm just trying to get somebody to kind of find. This is before we could take selfies, and I'm trying to get somebody to take a photo of me and Flip without asking Flip and whatnot. So, long story short, somehow it came up in conversation that I like to hunt. Well, he overheard that, and next thing I knew, that was my end with him. And we started talking about hunting, and he invited me to sit down with him at dinner, and he and his wife, Miss Diane, and we had a nice dinner together and spoke about hunting, and formed a friendship out of that, and come to find out our lives were very similar, in that. He's quite a bit older, and obviously when I say similar, outside of his Walker Cay Chronicles and all of his fly fishing accomplishments, which is absolutely not similar to mine. But I mean, as far as his career paths go, and in the timing of it, they were very similar. And he was a banker for 21 years. I've been in banking for about 20 years, and he really allowed me to talk to him about some life experiences I had and what I was going through, and help me make some decisions, because he actually had been there, done that. And I mean, from our relationships to our parents, to career choices, to mistakes we've made. And he's been, still is, he's been very gracious, and taking up a lot of time with me, and this is, I've never fished with him in my life. I hunted with him all the time. He comes up here and brings his trailer and hangs out for a few weeks and does a little bit of guiding for us. But getting back to your question, I've had for whatever reason, I don't know, just dumb luck on it, I've had a lot of guidance in my life from some pretty accomplished outdoorsmen that have helped me through along. Now, they never, they would always make sure I was kind of going the right direction. They never gave me the answer to the question, but they would make sure I was, down the right path in some of the choices that I made. So I'm very gracious for that.
And there is still a sense too where, you're saying dumb luck, but then on the outdoor side, you don't believe in luck. You tell you guys,
And when I say, what I mean by that, when I say I don't believe in luck, obviously there's such a thing, but it's a fluke. I mean, you don't know why. Why did I run into this person there? Who knows? I mean, what if I hadn't have? There's nothing that was set up in order for me to meet this or that person. So.
But there's still people still have responsibility.
They do.
And whether that's following up with an email or.
They do.
And one of the things I was talking to somebody recently about that I'm trying to do is I build relationships and try to find people who are willing to give me time and invest in me, as I try to listen.
Yes.
Which there's plenty of people who say they want a mentor, but they just don't want to listen. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
But,
no.
And then also being kind, being generous, being thoughtful about them, making sure that you realize, okay, this guy's still got a wife and he's got a family. I'm not going to try to be too invasive here. And, knowing when to ask questions. But also I was talking to somebody recently that was trying to get into fishing, and he was talking about, how do I try to, want to fish some of my friends? I said, well, you know what, be the guy that always offers to clean the boat. Be the guy who brings, some snacks and sandwiches, and you offer, be that guy. Be excited to learn, be willing to do what you can. And,
right.
You might not know what's going on with, in this particular instance, this guy was wanting to do kingfishing. You're not going to know the first day how all this is working and what's going on with that.
Exactly. You need to be hat in hand.
But you sure can grab a brush at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And that's not rocket science, but a lot of
Right.
people, they're just not willing to do that. And I do think that it's still, that obviously there's a fluke, or there's, you never know who's going to walk in the room while you're there, who you're going to get an opportunity to meet. But there is still a responsibility that you have to capitalize, even with relationships, where, you need to not miss that moment.
You're exactly right. And you also have to realize their time is just as important as your time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not waste anybody's time, and give credit where credit's due. And I feel like you need to be professional too. And I think that that's something somewhere along the lines we're kind of losing in a lot of ways. Just remember to be professional. Do what you say. If you can't, there's no excuse not to communicate. I can't stand that when somebody tells you they're going to do something and they never do it and they never follow up. That's a pet peeve of mine, and I've got a very short leash with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, if it's all right with you, I'd love to transition into some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
We'll just go back and forth. This was actually, a couple of these were sent in by people off our newsletter when we said, hey, we're going to hang out with Gray down at FOE. The first one is just simply, tell us what you try to do when hunting with scent control. What is the secret?
The secret to scent control is not to fall for the gimmicks. I believe that the only way you're going to, first of all, I don't care where you are, whether you're Florida, wherever else. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to smell you. So just play the wind. The wind is your scent control. You obviously always want to be set up downwind, and that doesn't mean there's not going to be a deer or whatever that comes in from the wrong way, but nothing you can do about it, especially in Florida, because our rut's going on when it could be 90, 95 degrees out here. You're sweating bullets, and if you think any type of, special deodorant or special clothing or whatever is going to help control your scent, you're crazy.
Well, there's so many products.
Don't waste
They got a million.
Don't waste your
different
money.
products.
Don't waste your time. Some of the biggest Florida deer I've killed, I was in shorts. So, but you do play the wind. You have to play the wind. And that's a key. And sometimes that means, you just don't get the luxury of sitting in a particular stand that you wanted to sit in. The wind's wrong. You can't go to it. You're going to bust them. So you have to be disciplined. But yeah, the wind's the only scent control that we pay attention to.
Yeah, and I'm not super sure if this next question is relevant. I don't know if you guys do any food plotting or whatnot, but on the other side, what natural food sources have you found to be most effective for the game that
we
you
have a
guys are
lot
hunting?
of oak trees on our properties, from live oaks, laurel oaks, blackjack oaks, you name it. And it's I don't care what you have out in the woods, at least, and I can't speak to other parts of the state, or the southeast, I should say, but in our particular part here, I haven't found anything that's going to compete really with acorns. We've planted cowpeas, clay peas, etc., and they love that, but a problem with that, they wipe them out overnight. And plus in our area, if you notice, our soil is very sandy. We have very poor pH. It's very hard to get that pH up because once it rains, everything just leaches right through. But oak trees, acorns, that's our biggest competitor. So that said, you have a large oak hammock, all right? It's in the middle of a rut, and acorns are dropping everywhere. And I don't care if you have a corn feeder out there; they're going to walk around that. They're going to look at corn like we look at potato chips. It could be it's a snack, we can take it or leave it. It's not something. It's not a steak. And the acorns are steaks. So they're going to walk by corn. That's just, certain times of year, that's a waste. So what you can do, a trick that I've learned, so you can narrow down what oak trees they go to and what oak trees they don't, because otherwise it's just blindly setting a stand somewhere that you think hopefully they go to this tree as opposed to the one 100 yards away. In the springtime, and I'm only going to tell you what I do, not how I do it. So I'm going to leave it at that, let you figure it out. So in the springtime, you go and you find 3 or 4 oak trees that fairly close together, and you find a good tree to hang a stand from. And I like to hang a stand, or maybe I look for a place I can hang a couple of stands, so I could play depending on what the wind is, I can still hunt the area. And you make sure that there's a good stand to hang or tree to hang a stand on. You find your oak trees, and you fertilize the oak trees. And by fertilizing them in the spring, fall comes and they start dropping their acorns, those deer are going to come to those trees over the other trees in that said hammock, because those trees are going to be more acorns, but most importantly, sweeter. They're going to be a little sweeter than the others, and they're going to hit that like crazy.
I thought you were going to say you go out and kind of sprinkle some powdered sugar on the acorns and prepare it. And
I don't know. It might work.
Yeah, well, if it does.
I tell you try it, you let me know, and we'll see. All right.
All right, that sounds good. I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to go here anyway. If you had to pick, what would you rather do, hunting or fishing? What species and what style?
If it's hunting season, I'm going to tell you I'd rather hunt. If it's fishing season, I'd rather fish.
Well,
so,
if we're forcing you to just do one, the president.
Man, you can't do that. Otherwise, that's what I just said. I've always followed outdoors. Oh man, I don't know. If I had to do just one, I don't know, man. That's on the spot, and I'm going to be held to this. But I guess it would be bow hunting.
For whitetail.
Well, he gets hunting in general. He had to.
Yeah, now you're really making it.
I just think everybody needs to be ready.
I guess, for whitetail, I guess so. I love whitetail hunting. I drew an ibex tag this year in New Mexico, and so it's like a once in a lifetime tag. Yeah. So that might be my answer after that, or it might not be. But I'm really right now it's ibex.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that you're going to come to the point where you have to make that decision, but it is fun to put somebody in the hot seat. It
is. Whitetail is it's especially Florida whitetail, and I don't. You can go. What's interesting is, every professional bow hunter that's hunted Florida will say the same thing, that if you can hunt Florida, if you grew up hunting Florida with the bow, then you can hunt anywhere in the United States. It's our deer may not be the largest deer, but they are, for whatever reason, they're the wiliest. They come in and they're looking up. They're skittish. They're not laid back at all. Not that you can't rattle our deer in, but it's very hard to rattle our deer in. I don't know what it is. It's just like the Osceola turkey. For whatever reason, they just seem to be a little more skittish than, say, the Merriam and the Rio. And I know this because I've hunted Texas, I've hunted Kansas, I've hunted Georgia, I've hunted Alabama, and I should say Florida. I mean, South Georgia and Alabama, same. Southeast. If you hunt the Southeast whitetail, they're just the most skittish deer that I've ever hunted. Kansas, everything works, rattling, grunting. I mean, they're all coming in. You run them off, they come back. I mean, Nebraska, same thing. It's until you hunt Florida. This is the outback of the United States. It is by far the toughest state to hunt. Period. Whitetail, hands down.
So along the lines of that question, 200-pound tarpon on fly or 200 class whitetail?
200 class whitetail, baby, all day. Yeah, you can have. I'd 40-pound tarpon on fly or something. I love those smaller tarpon. Those are my favorite. I like the acrobatic ones, and you're not fighting them for 5 hours or whatever, and it's just you can get them on and get them off. I don't know. They're more fun.
What's your favorite part of what you get to do?
Sharing this with people, hands down. I love sharing this experience with people. I want them to have a chance to see what it's like to live and experience a piece of wild Florida that's just going away. There's not much left, and all of our properties that we have here, conservation is so important to us that I've sold the developmental rights on all of our properties and put a conservation easement on every bit of it, and that's quite a bit of land we have here. And so it's not just words, but it's actions here. We practice what we preach 100%.
What's your least favorite part
of this?
Yeah.
When it's over and season's over and everybody kind of has a month or two and goes their separate ways.
Twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah, it's lonely, it's quiet. You hear the crickets and everything. You can't hunt, too hot to fish, and it's just but you got to hang these stands and this and that. So
the work.
It's always work. You're never not working, and it's physically it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but I've always told myself, if you're able to look in the mirror in the morning and smile, then you're doing the right thing you need to be doing. And so far, I'm not only looking in the mirror and smiling, I'm laughing. I'm loving it. I love every bit of this.
If you could have one thing placed on a billboard for every outdoorsman to see, what would it be? A phrase or
A phrase?
we might hold you to this. That's going to be a big advertising campaign.
I mean, I'm serious, and it'd be more or less advice. I would say the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I just live by that. I live by that code.
With the lucky in air quotes.
Yeah, with a picture of me holding that 200-inch whitetail.
Yeah.
That you're just talking about.
What are you most concerned about with the next generation of outdoorsmen?
When I was growing up, respect was something that my dad and everyone in my family that had anything to do with raising me, from my grandmother to my dad to my mom, everybody, respect was something that they made sure that I understood and gave back. And I don't know that that's a value, that's something that is pressed upon the younger generation as much as it was my generation. And now I have 2 girls, and I can promise you that they are yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and they understand the meaning of respect. That is something that I have, I worry about that. You cannot. People talk about Instagram and social media and all of this and everything, and is it the necessary evil? Is it something you have to do, but it's bad, blah, blah, blah? It doesn't have to be, and like we talked earlier, I look at it like alcohol. There's a responsibility there that you can do it the right way, and it can be beneficial and it can be good. Or you can not be responsible about it, and it can end up hurting you, hurting somebody else, and it can be abused. So you have to be respectful and have to have responsibility in using that. And so, I don't know how much of that is still portrayed and still taught. We cannot prevent change, and a lot of people try to fight it, but we at FOE, instead, we embrace it, whether we like it or not. We embrace it. So that meaning, you're always going to have new guides coming along, and instead of fighting them and yelling and screaming at them, you might as well embrace them and try to teach them the right way to do things. And hopefully that they should respect that and try to emulate you and going forward. And so I think that's one of my biggest concerns is I don't know that I see a lot of that respect that the younger guys and girls coming up has, and I don't know if it's a generational thing or what. I hope I'm wrong, and I can tell you from the younger, and I'm going to say millennials that we have on our team here, they're, I'm definitely wrong if they're a good model of what's coming along, but I'm just seeing some stuff out there that has me a little bit concerned. But that's it. I don't want to end on a negative note with that. The future's very bright too. There's a lot of good dudes coming along. Some younger guys, and in the ones in their 30s, I'm still calling younger, like Stump, for instance, in Home Assassin. I mean, that guy and that whole group down there. They're really they're the flag bearers of the future generation, and they're really doing a great job with that and keeping that tradition alive, So, I do have some positive things to say about the future too.
Well, speaking of the future, what does success look like for FOE?
Yeah, we've got some new things coming along. It's pretty exciting. We're going to be starting a podcast called True Wild Florida, and we've got a new team member that's coming on board, and I won't name names just now, but I can tell you that a lot of people in the industry know who he is, and great guy, and he's going to add a lot of wow factor, I think, to the podcast going forward, and to the overall team in general. I'm real excited about this guy coming on board with us. So, we got a podcast coming on, and so hopefully we'll have you guys on it as soon as we can.
Yeah,
get it
I'm
going.
excited.
Yeah.
And your idea behind it is trying to highlight Florida, the nature of Florida, and to bring in people who can speak to that in different industry areas.
Yeah, not just one industry, not just fishing, not just hunting, but maybe in from a cattle background or agriculture background, or maybe, you know, even from a developer's background, and get a perspective on that, you know, to see what's the future and what are some of the obstacles they see and how are they doing this and still, you know, trying to maintain our natural resources here without destroying that. You know, I would like to hear their point of view, and I mean that you have to in order to be educated on something. It can't just be one-sided. I want to hear both sides. So,
and it's going to be so franchisable. I hope that, you know, you and I talked some about podcasting, but I think there's just so much good that can come out of it because it allows you to sit down and listen to somebody for an extended amount of time and really get educated and hear about their perspective on things. And it's going to open up. I'm excited about it as a Floridian, as a 5th generation Floridian, to be able to learn more about the history and conservation. And Florida is very diverse. I think a lot of people miss that, you know, you can drive 10 hours and still be in the same state. The fisheries are different, and Central Florida.
Even our accents are different, man.
Our accents are way different. And, you know, and to me, I think it's going to be a really fun journey to follow, and it's going to be called
True Wild Florida.
True Wild Florida. And we'll make sure that we keep everybody up to date on
right.
that. But
thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you guys for coming down and spending the day with me.
Awesome.
Come back.
Yeah. If people want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, they can. We have a website, FloridaOutdoorExperience.com, and we also Instagram, Facebook. On Instagram, it's FL Outdoors, or obviously Facebook, Florida Outdoor Experience, or 352-221-5444. Give me a shout.
Thanks for coming on. Have a good day.
Yeah, man. You too.
Hey guys, thanks again for listening to the Captain's Collective. This is a part of Waypoint Collective, where you can find all sorts of great content. Also, to find out more about the Captain's Collective and to see some behind the scenes stuff, we'd love for you to head to captainscollective.com. Till next time, we'll see you again. This is the Captain's Collective.